Hi everyone, it's TTL back with another video for you, and today we're going to be taking a look at the 3080 and the 3090, but in a very nerd porny kind of way. In that, what we are going to do is give them a good strip down and see what's going on underneath. Now, reference design isn't Founders Edition anymore, and technically these are not reference because they've got an extra power choke and stuff underneath them. But I thought what it would be good to do is get them stripped down, because Gigabyte have left them with me so that I can do this video, because all of the other cards have gone. I know a lot of you thought about scalping and reviewers getting all the cards, but they pretty much are all on rotation at the moment, because compared to normal there aren't very many of them. But we're going to give them a strip down so that I can show you the PCB differences between the 3080 and the 3090. And in reality, what I'm expecting to see on the 3090 is more power regulators and, quite clearly, quite a bit more RAM. Now, aesthetically, on the outside of the cards, the most noticeable difference, even though you do still have to look quite carefully, is the fact that one has the NV-Link stroke SLI link on the end and one doesn't. And when you dig in past that point, it's all exactly the same. They've got the same amount of display ports around the back, the same amount of HDMIs. They have the same twin 8-pin power connectors. The cooler's the same. The backplate's the same, and I know I'm talking too fast and the B-roll won't be able to keep up. But what I am going to do is I'm going to strip them down for you so that we can have a good look. I would also suggest that if you are going to be doing this at home, magnetic screwdrivers will save you a lot of hassle, and I literally could not live without them. So all I'm going to do first off is pull off the screws that I can, but I can already see by looking at the screws through the card, you can see that there are some threads coming through from the other side of the PCB. So what I'm going to need to do is remove the cooler from the other side of the card first, and then what that's going to do is let me get access to the other screws that I'm going to have to do from the other side. So some of them I'm actually going to have to do to be able to get the back plate off. I'm going to have to undo the screws from the other side, so the PCB side. And it doesn't look like it's going to be too difficult for me to strip it down, which is why I've kept talking. But if I do end up putting music over the top, then you're never going to know anyway. But it looked like it was going to be a relatively simple strip. I'm just looking around the back to see if we've got any connectors up this end, and it doesn't appear that we do. Things are already starting to peel off, but again, it's a case of glancing around, and there, oh, that's the one that I'm looking for. I could feel something still grabbing, and there is a little screw here which isn't on the back plate. You cheeky little one. There we go. Yeah, it's definitely still on the other side. So then I'll turn it around for you to have a look at here. There we go. Oh, there she blows. Now, one thing I will say is there is an awful lot of thermal paste on this card. Just trying to get that fan mount off. Right, so I'm trying to do this very gingerly so that I'm preserving things as best as I possibly can be to show you guys. But that is the PCB off. Now, I did say about screws through to the other side, and there is one here, and one here. And once they are off, then the PCB itself will come off from the back plate. I'm going to have to disconnect these extension cables, but I'm going to stop the camera, take some pictures, and then I am going to, where does that go? It goes along there. See, what I try and do is I try and keep things as close as I can do to where they need to be, so that then when it all goes back together. Right, so there we go. That is your bare 3080. In fact, let's just do this real quick because it hasn't taken us very long. There we have it. And then what we can also do now is flip it around and have a look around the back. I will put up some better pictures for you, but while I talk about pictures, so now for the nerdy bit, with both of the PCBs completely exposed. Now, what I do want to say is, and it has been kind of difficult getting this out of Gigabyte, but it is a reference sized PCB. But if you have a look, and I did have to get these images from the video cards website because they put some pictures up of reference PCBs, proper reference PCBs. You can see with the Gigabytes, basically up in this area, you can quite clearly see that the PCI Express connectors are in a completely different place, because with the Gigabytes, we have the connectors on the side and then the little extensions, so the 8 pins are right at the end of the card. So that side of it, for their design with the air cooler, definitely works best. And it's a really nice touch. And the other thing that I will say with the Gigabyte, which is the most noticeably different on the power side, is down at the front of the card, near the video connectors, the capacitors are different. So you can see that you've got the smaller ones on the Gigabyte, but with the reference PCB, they are the normal taller capacitors like we have on the rest of the board. But I will say that at first simple glance, that around the actual GPU core itself and the very closest range of capacitors and chokes looks very similar. It does appear that the Gigabyte chokes, that so you've got the memory chips, then you've got the capacitors, then you've got the like the rectangle blocks. Those are the chokes. They appear a bit smaller than the reference ones as well. So despite it being a reference size, I'm going to say that the reference water coolers won't fit. But the reference water cooler peeps will have up-to-date compatibility lists on their website. So if that does change, they might be able to get away with a slightly thicker thermal interface pad or something. But, you know, at first basic glance, they look different enough to cause enough troubles with the water block. One thing I will say though is when it does come to the reference design now, not many of the manufacturers are actually using it. Even Nvidia don't particularly. And Gigabyte, I'm assuming what they've effectively done, we know already that the standard, the reference one is 13 plus 4 phases. The Gigabyte is 14 plus 4. So we knew that was an extra one anyway, but because of the difference between the 3090 and the 3080, the 3080 has a few power phases missing off of it anyway, that they could have just nailed an extra one on. But they have made some component upgrades as well. And obviously, down the end, they've changed where the PCI Express cables would have gone completely. So we know there's a fair few changes once you start to dig into it. So what I'm now going to do, now that we know that it's definitely not a reference design and it's a lot more than just the power connectors on this end, what I'm going to do is we're going to look at the differences between the two Gigabyte PCBs. And effectively, if you have a look around the outside, on the 3080, there are a few memory chips missing on the business side, and we'll call the core side the business side. There's a couple of memory chips missing up here. And we knew that there was going to be memory chips missing anyway, because the 3080 is 10 gigabyte and then the 3090 is 24. So there's 10 on the front of this one, there's 12 on the front of this one. But the other thing is when you go around the back, there are a lot of missing memory chips, and that is because around the back of the 3090, that's where the other 12 are hiding. So that's where they all disappear and appear to. And like I said, there are parts around the outside of the board where you can see that there are power phases missing and chokes and all of that sort of stuff. But one thing I did notice as well, which is kind of interesting, is up near the PCI Express connectors, or where the power connectors are, the 3080 has two completely missing connectors. And I don't know whether they're fan connectors or something like that, whether they're going to be used for another model of card, but the 3090 has all three of those connectors there, but there was only one fan plugged in. So although the connectors are there wasn't any use for them. I don't know whether they were for individual fan connectors or, you know, what was going on. The one in the middle, which is the 3-pin, is the one that was plugged in. And then you have two 4-pins around the outside, so one either side, and they weren't plugged in at all. Around the back of the PCB is pretty much very similar, apart from the missing RAM chip. Apart from this little section here, and I'm going to draw your attention to this, and it's quite clean around here. But then when we move over to the other card, it's just not there, and you can see that you've got that little component there instead. Now this looks a lot busier to me than this one. So you can see it's a very, very small one there, and then when we pan over here, it must be something to do with power. You've got that one there. But it also does give us, I know we've shown you like close-ups of the memory chip. So this is the 3090, because you can see the all of the extra memory chips that are there. These soldering points are for on the other side. It's where the chokes are. So you can see that there, and then when we slide over, you can see there's an awful lot more missing on this one. Plus you have the missing chokes and stuff still. It was the missing choke, it was the chokes up this end that was then leading me to think, oh, you know, that might be it. And then you obviously dig into it, and this will be where the memory chips would have been. It's actually quite interesting to pick into them. Let's see if we can get a semi-decent view of both. I don't think it's going to be particularly possible, not even with funky camera angles, but you get the idea. I thought it was really nice for us to have a dig in like this, because let's face facts, when it comes to stuff like this, not many of us are going to be able to do both. This video was plainly and simply about being inquisitive and wanting to have a look. We're not going to be lucky enough at home for a normal user to be able to rip something down like this just to have a look, but I know lots of you out there do pay a genuine interest in what's going on beneath the PCB, beneath the cooler, and to get a good look at the PCB. So I took my opportunity while I could to be able to get these done with the Gigabyte cards. I'm obviously now going to rebuild them, put all new thermal paste and everything on, and get them all buttoned up, and then I'll run a few tests on them quickly. Oh, one thing I did want to say is the one thing that I did notice between the two coolers, and I should have said this before, was on the 3090, that extra little screw that was so when I was taking the 3080 apart, there was that one little screw that was left over at the end that I couldn't get it, I was trying to take the cooler off, you know the one I mean? And I was like, oh, there's that last screw. Well, on the 3090, it wasn't actually there. But the cooler's exactly the same. The thread point was the same. It's just the screw wasn't there. And I don't know whether that's something that they've done on purpose or whether that screw was missing. But if I'm completely honest, if I can find one in the magic box of spares, then I'm actually going to fit that screw anyway, because it does feel like it should have been there. It's right on the end of like the VRM phase kind of channel, and it must give good bracing, and I don't understand why it would have been on the 3080 but then completely wasn't there on the 3090, so I don't know. But there we go, we've had a good look. It's old school nerd porn. I'm not even sure if that's going to get flagged up as a bad thing with the YouTube algorithms now, because, you know, it's a naughty word and all of that sort of thing. But you guys understand I'm not trying to be rude or lewd, and it's just the fact that we have, we'll say bare PCBs, just in case. But for now at least, this is the tiniest of Logan's. It is the Friday after NDA. This is the last thing I'm doing, and now I'm going to have a weekend off. Please send pity, but I would prefer coffee and biscuits because I'm going to be spending the time at the workshop. We're going to have some more stuff coming up for you soon for all the regulars, so keep your eyes peeled because I have a fair bit of stuff to get done, which is why I need a couple of days off.